Alright folks, welcome back to another adventure in the garage, and today we've got quite the adventure to tackle. I've gotten in this 2000 GMC Jimmy, the 4.3, and the harmonic balancer bolt has snapped off. Now the story that I got from the customer was that this happened maybe 2 months ago. Her boyfriend, who's a helicopter mechanic, went in and did the repair, and then it snapped again, and I guess he's out of town for like a month, so they hired me to tackle it this round. So as far as extracting this bolt, anytime that I've used an internal extractor like this style, it's always broken on me every single time. Now the stubby version of this, I'm sure I would have a lot of success with, but it's recessed in there pretty far, probably about a ½ inch, maybe even a little bit more. So I'm going to try a different method where basically I plan on building up a weld bead on the broken bolt and then welding a nut to it and trying to extract it that way. Because it is recessed in there, I also plan on using this 6mm. I'm going to sacrifice it, so I'm going to cut it off here, or yeah, somewhere around about here, and then I'm going to drill out the inside so I have some room, and I'm going to use that kind of as like a protective sheath so that my weld doesn't accidentally, go to a sidewall. That's my plan A. If that doesn't work, then I will try using an internal extractor. So I've never heard of this happening. I don't know if you guys have come across this, but if you guys are in this same situation, hopefully this video will help you out. So first I'm gonna practice welding, then I'll prep the vehicle, I'll jack it up. I plan on removing the fan shroud and fan clutch assembly to give me a bit more room in there so I can see, and also so I can try to get the welder, straight on to that broken bolt. So wish me luck. I'll take you along for the adventure. Hopefully I can get this stupid thing out of there and move on to the next job. So here we go. So yeah, let's try throwing down some beads and adjusting our settings. I'm using 3500s flux core. That's my size. So yeah, let's just try this out, see how it goes. Good news is my welds are absolutely horrendous. Okay, so after about 5 minutes, a couple little beats down, I think that's enough practice for what I'm about to do. They seem to be staying on there okay, so I think I'm getting enough penetration. So now I need to practice just building like a little tower, and then I'll apply that to a little bolt. I'm sure anybody that has any actual welding experience is laughing at me, but you gotta start somewhere, and you gotta always be open to getting outside of your comfort zone and your expertise, and and learning new things. If I just stayed within my realm of comfort, probably 3/4 of my jobs I wouldn't have. So always put yourself out there and try new things, and don't be scared. People will make fun of you and all that stuff, but who cares, man? So let's try to do a little tower. Okay, it seems like I'm really just making a ball here. I think I need to let it cool down or turn down my voltage to build on this. So let's switch to a bolt and see how that goes. Okay, you probably noticed I was a little shaky in the last video. All I had was a monster in my system. I hadn't eaten yet. And two, I was having a little bit of an adrenaline rush. Yeah, but I don't really have that steady of hands in the first place. My old boss told me once, he said, I am not a cake maker. Whatever that means. So let's give this a hand at a bolt. We'll try longer cooling periods in between beads and just see how this goes. So it does seem possible to build up a bead on a bolt end, but the problem I'm running into is it wants to drip down. You know, my little sheath here is going to end up getting welded to the bolt that I'm after, which is fine, and then I can just try to weld a nut onto the end of this, and then that way I don't really have to build that much up. I think that's kind of enough practice. I think proof of concept's been established. So let's get this cut and prepped, and then we'll get a look at what the job's gonna be. Yeah, I'm going a little too fast. Shouldn't be blue, but it is what it is. Cool. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys what the actual job is, give you a better visual. So you can see our bolt is broken off down in this. This is your crankshaft. The idea is, in theory, to weld this little guy down in there, going through the inside of this, you know, basically extending that MIG wire out till it hits this, and then filling that kind of full of some weld, seeing if it's on there, and then if it is, welding a nut onto the end of this. So what I'm going to do to help give me some room is I'm going to remove the fan clutch and shroud next, get this car jacked up so I can try to be a little bit more comfortable, and so I can kind of try to see better in there. I don't know what else I'll have to pull. I might have to pull the radiator and the condenser to get the room I need to actually see what I'm doing, but you know, we'll see. Okay, so where I'm at so far, I've got one side of the car jacked up. I decided to hold off on the other side until I did some of the work in here, the prep work. Top of the fan shell cover is really self-explanatory. Some of you, if you're new or a little less experienced, probably curious on how to get that fan clutch off. Oftentimes, the tension from the serpentine belt is enough friction to where you can break that nut loose with a big wrench. Sometimes that's not always the case. If not, something that you can use to hold that water pump pulley in place is a good size strap wrench. You can get one from the Home Depot and hold that water pump pulley in place so you can crack that bad boy loose. If fan clutches is something you pull all the time, you're probably already familiar with this kit. I don't have a part number or anything. I think it might be made by Lyle, but you can just look up pneumatic fan clutch set. It'll look something like this. It's got a bunch of different sizes, and then you utilize it with either a hammer or an air hammer, and it does a great job of knocking that little nut on the fan off loose. Really handy kit to have if you're a DIYer and you work on a few different makes and models. But this will cover pretty much any of this kind of style fan clutch that you can run into. I really like it. It's totally worth having. Just a note for fan clutches, some are right hand thread, some are left hand thread. I believe Chevy and Ford is right hand thread, but I think when I worked at Land Rover, I think they're left hand thread. So it might be important to hop online and double check the direction before you start just like hammering down on that thing. If you're having trouble getting it off, it might be the wrong threading. So I'll get this fan here pulled. And you want to be careful when you're pulling this not to knock the radiator. It can be pretty easy to put a hole in that thing. And then instead of your one little job you were going in for, now you got to pull and replace the radiator on top of that. I'm just going to get this bottom shroud off and then jack and support the right hand side of the vehicle, and then we'll see if this welding is going to work out. I'm kind of nervous, feel kind of discouraged, but you know, that's the job. I got to at least try. Well, I have to get it out no matter what. I mean, that's what they pay me to do. So Man, I'm a bit anxious. Hopefully I can get on the other side of this and I'll feel so much better. Alright folks, so there was a couple other things I ended up pulling. I pulled the radiator, but I also pulled the oil filter, and I just got it out of the way with one of these ties. And now you can see, we can really see the job, which I feel a lot better about. I can get up in there and get the welder in there, and you can see how deep it's broken in there. I would say this would be possible, definitely possible to drill and extract if you're wanting to go that method. I'll show you the two different drills I have. One drill I have for tight spots. This one's by Milwaukee, but you can get one by Bauer from Harbor Freight. I think for like 60 or 80 bucks or something like that. And then another option that I have for really tight spots, I've got this pneumatic air drill. You can see that profile on there is pretty tight, just a couple inches. And then if the drill bit is too long, you know, obviously you can just chop it here and then bring that back in so that you only have, you know, maybe 2 inches. So I'm gonna get in there tomorrow and get that welded in. Wish me the best of luck. Hopefully it goes well. So I think that was a bit of a try, but mostly a fail. I just don't think in this application that's gonna work. I think I'm more likely to weld that bolt in there and then screw myself even more than I am to, in a controlled manner, build up a bead or weld another piece of material onto there to give me a bit of an extension to weld a nut onto. So I'm gonna switch over to the drill and extraction method, which I freaking hate and I think is gonna take forever and it might break the extractor. Nevertheless, total bummer, but in situations like this, you gotta have plan A, plan B, plan C. So we'll try something else, see if that works. All right, so I've been doing some thinking. I know the workbench is a mess, but that's how it looks when you're fighting the good fight. And I was thinking, you know, if I try and drill that out, there's a really good chance I'm gonna screw that up. Just understand, if this was a shop or a dealership environment, I wouldn't be going through all this. I would have told the customer straight away, one, it needs an engine, or two, we need to pull a crank and send it to a machine shop. But I'm trying to keep this ticket under a certain amount of cost for this client of mine. I thought, okay, if I'm gonna drill this, I need to drill it nice and straight for my extractor. If the extraction doesn't work, I'll invest in a tap and die kit specific for crankshafts and see if we can do that. And then if none of that works, then I think the lady's just gonna sell the car as is. I was like, there's gotta be like a jig set up for crankshafts on that section there for drilling that out. I figured probably machine shops probably just make their own. I think I found one for sale, but I wasn't sure if it was for this motor and all that stuff. So I was like, let's try making a jig. So what I'm gonna do tomorrow is I'm gonna pick up a new 6mm deep, and I have this crankshaft little rotator guy for when you're doing timing jobs and stuff like that. And what I was thinking is I would basically set that like that, center it best I could. Now obviously I'm using a 1/4 inch size drill bit. That's what this is going to be set up for. So I have, you know, if it's not perfectly straight, I've got wiggle room. But I figure I just do a little weld of this, drill out this to my 1/4 inch size, and then that way I have a nice little jig that'll slide over to my crank. You know, it'll be able to get into that recessed portion, and then I'll be able to run my drill and press on it nice without having to worry about walking that drill bit, you know, all over the place. So that's what we're gonna try tomorrow. All right, folks, I got some exciting news, an end to another adventure in the garage. So let me walk you through the process of how I actually ended up getting it out. My first concern was going in there and drilling, that when it broke off out at a slant. And so I was really worried about my bit walking all over and damaging the threads for the snout of the crankshaft. So what I built is a little jig, a little drill guide to help me start my initial drilling dead center. And you could take a look at this. The welds are terrible, I know, but that's okay. I'm not a welder, I'm a mechanic. I just need to make a tool to do a job. That's all this is. So feel free to talk all the trash you want down in the comments, but I'll show them off. Ooh, nasty, but it worked. The way that it kind of works, you'll figure out a socket that works for the outer diameter of your crankshaft, and then find a suitable size tall socket, welded them together. I drilled out the center of this so that it would fit my 1/4-inch bit nice. There was a little bit of slop in it, but it was enough to make sure that I started really center. And then something that I would recommend, if you don't have a good tool guy or anything like that and you're a do-it-yourselfer like me, most of the time your only chance for tools and bits and stuff like that is at the hardware store. So I picked up these Milwaukee, they're cobalt strength, cobalt type, and I like the Milwaukees for 2 reasons. One is you can see here it's got this chamfered cutouts on it so that the bit doesn't tend to slip as much, and then 2, I don't know how well you can see that tip, but there's a little point to it. And so if you use a jig to get it centered, then you can use that point to keep it from walking around, and then just make sure you're at the proper angle and everything for how the engine is sitting. And then as far as extractions, I did use a deep style extractor. The bolt was actually pretty loose in there. It didn't give me really that much trouble. And then, obviously use the extractor for whatever size bit you ended up using. This was my setup for this job. This is the V6, but I think the V8 could have different dimensions. I'm not sure. But these are the sizes that work for me. So I used a 6 here, 1.25 inch for the outer diameter. I ended up drilling with a 1/4-inch bit and then the appropriate size extractor. If you're in a situation where your crankshaft bolt broke, just try to be patient, try to be creative, and as long as you get it out without damaging anything, then you're freaking cool in my book, dude. I hope that helps. Thanks for coming along to another adventure in the garage. Don't forget to like and subscribe and talk trash about my welds down in the comments section. Hope that helps somebody out there. See you on the next one.